What's going on, guys? Right Bomby Teacher in the house, and I'm your coach of the Royal Bournemouth Bombies, and this is the GPL Week 1 Team Builder. Your Royal Bournemouth Bombies are taking on the Malahide Marshadows and Coach 2D, who's someone I don't really know very much about, to be honest. I've seen him in the Poke 1 community, but I've never actually faced him. I don't know much about his battle history or his draft league history or anything like that, so I'm going into this kind of completely blind. He's got a very peculiar draft as well. He's got a lot of decent pockets of a lot of different styles of drafts, but they've all kind of come together in a little bit of a weird pattern. So we are going to talk about his team, then talk about my team afterwards. Now, I am going to be honest here, I didn't do as much prep on this as I would have liked. This was partly due to Pokemon Masters coming out, and I kind of got addicted very quickly, so I'm actually recording this quite late. I'm actually recording this on the same day I'm doing the battle. However, I've had weird connection issues today as well, which has meant this is about the third time I've tried to record this, so hopefully we're all good this time round. Right, first up on his team is Mega Garchomp. It's a pretty unusual Mega in the sense that when it Mega Evolves, it actually loses some of its speed. It causes a bit of a problem for him because when he Mega Evolves, he's actually slower than my Hydreigon, and my Hydreigon does a number to it with Draco Meteor, so it's an unusual one for his team. Does have the Sand Force when it Mega Evolves, but it doesn't really do much as he doesn't really have Sand Setters on his team. It's a good Rock Setter, got some decent both physical and special moves, can be a good Mix Breaker, could potentially be a sweeper with SD, so could be a lot of different things. I expect it to come this week because I expect him to bring his Mega every week, but yeah, I don't see it doing too much in this match for him. Next up is my particular favourite part of his team is his Regenerator Core. He has a Tornadus T, of course, fast defogger, decent pivot with U-turn, gets Regenerator, of course, recovering his health back. Decent enough coverage options, but like a lot of his damage moves, actually suffer with accuracy misses. Things like Hurricane, things like Heat Wave, pretty much its primary move options, they're all not 100% accurate, so he may end up getting a few really bad misses unless he can find some way to boost his own accuracy with it. Taunty also has the problem that it's kind of weak to Stealth Rocks, which does actually significantly reduce the impact of Regenerator. Things like Toxic also hurt it quite a lot as well. This thing is actually a fantastic Z-move user. Things like Z-Hurricane, Z-Heatwave actually do a lot to my team. However, 2D's opted not to pick this as one of his Z-Captains, so bit of a missed opportunity for him there, I think, but nonetheless. We move on to Tangrowth. Tangrowth is a okay Regenerator mon. I think it kind of is overshadowed a lot by a Moongus because Moongus has the poison typing, so it can absorb Toxic Spikes. Unfortunately, Tangrowth doesn't have that access, so he's weak to pretty much every entry hazard in the game. Can be really poor against Stealth Rocks as well. It does get a decent amount of move pool. It's missing U-turn for pivoting, but it can switch in, take a hit, switch back out again. It does get some okay moves for Assault Vest sets, things like Knockoff, not too bad. I expect him more to bring a Rocky Helmet set because a lot of my big hitting threats against his team are actually physical, so I think he has a better chance of bringing a sort of Rocky Helmet defensive set, but we'll see. Next up is Rotom Wash on his team. I like Rotom Wash a lot. I think it's a really decent pivot. I had it last season in the GPL. Decent typing, of course. It's got Levitate, so it's only got the water weaknesses and things like the grass type to deal with. Gets a nice utility as well. It gets things like Will-O-Wisp, gets Pain Split for recovery, and of course it gets Defog. It's got a pretty poor HP stat though, and it doesn't get the best recovery options outside of that Pain Split. It does get Rest, I think, but it's kind of a little bit meh. He could potentially run like a Trick Scarf set, which could be annoying for things like my Klefki. But I don't really see what else he brings. I think he brings a standard Leftovers type set, personally. Next up is Chandelure. Chandelure has a huge special attack stat. It's a fantastic special wall breaker at base 145. Got a pretty interesting typing, of course. Fire Ghost is not something you see every day. I think that one of my favourite parts about him is his abilities. Having access to Flame Body, does a Fire Resist, Instant Flash Fire, and Infiltrator to bypass substitutes. can be a particularly potent set. Can run things like Subcon Mind, could potentially be a choice Scarf set to try and outspeed Celebi. Could also... I think those are the most likely ones. I can see some really unusual sets coming. I was thinking of Z-Move, but again, this is not a Z-Captain for him, so it's an unlikely mon in a way, but I think it's a likely Scarf set to handle Celebi. Is probably the set I think he's going to bring the most. Next up on his team is Diancie. Diancie's super bulky. Access to clear body, meaning I can't really reduce its stats anywhere. Gets things like Stealth Rocks, gets Toxics, and decent offense across the board with 100 base stats in both. It does have a quad steel weakness, however, so can really suffer a little bit. Also doesn't really appreciate grass, water, and ground type moves, of which I have quite a few on my team, so we'll see if he does bring Diancie and how he opts to use it. I do have one of the perfect counters to it, in a way, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Next up, we'll talk about his Z-Captains. He has Gyarados as a Z-Captain. Now, Gyarados with Z-Bounce can be really quite scary with a Dragon Dance. It's got Moxie as well for sweeping it more effectively. I can also see him potentially, if he does bring Gyarados, bring like a really bulky set. He can run things like T-Wave and try and be like utility and cripple things like my Infernape and my Arrow. I can potentially see that coming, but Gyarados' coverage move pool is not super strong, so we'll see how he does bring it. Of course, he is quad weak to Electric, and I do have Galvantula, which outspeeds it pre-Dragon Dance. So it can be a little bit exploitable, but we'll see what we can do. His other Z-Captain is one that's actually going to change for week 2, is Porygon Z. Now, usually Porygon Z is a great Z-move user because it gets access to Z Conversion, which is an Omni-boosted move, so it's banned by the league. So unfortunately, PZ kind of struggles a lot, even to be a good Z-move user. It gets okay coverage, so it can use a lot of different coverage moves, but it kind of struggles defensively. It really doesn't have any way of taking advantage of Eviolite, for example, because it's fully evolved, which is where P2 is generally considered a lot better. So I don't really see Porygon coming. He could potentially bring like Z Hyper Beam just to try and tactically nuke something on my team, but aside from that, it doesn't really do anything against me. Next up is Raikou. Raiku's kind of decent. It's pretty quick. Got a decent move pool, gets a lot of different things. Could be a Subcon mindset with Sweeper Revenge Killer. Typically, I think he's probably going to more likely run Specs. It suffers against a lot of entry hazards, though. It actually gets hit by all of them, and it's kind of weak on the physically bulky side, so things like my Arrow really do hit it way too hard. It's worth noting that this is actually not going to be on 2D's team for week 2. He's actually dropping this for Volcarona. Not really sure what his reasons for those changes are. I'm not convinced by it myself, but he'll probably have a better answer for that than I will. He also has a Malamar on his team. I don't think it comes this week, but it might. Malamar, of course, is a rather unique Pokemon. It does get U-turn, does get Contrary Superpower. However, its only recovery option is Rest. So, kind of not great against my team. If he does try to bring it, he'd have to build his team around it, and I don't see how he can do that on his team. I have quite a lot of decent coverage options. Of course, Malamar is quad weak to Bug, so any U-turner really hits it quite hard. I do have quite a few U-turners on my team, so we'll see. If it does come, it's probably not going to do a lot, but I don't expect it to. And last up on his team is Beware. Pretty strong wall breaker. It's got a decent physical attack stat. It hits pretty much everything except ghost types particularly hard. I mean, it does get Brutal Swing, but that doesn't really do too much. Of course, it does have the Fluffy ability, which means that it takes physical hits pretty nicely. It's a good physical sponge. However, it doesn't really do much against special attackers, and it does have a rather weird artificial weakness to fire thanks to its own Fluffy ability. I think Beware might come. Possibly. It's a risk if he does opt to bring it. But yeah, I don't really see how he can make Beware work so much on his team. So let's talk about my team, what I'm bringing, why I am bringing it. First up on the team, I'm sure you can probably already guess looking at the moves and abilities and item, it's going to be Pteranodon, the Mega Arrow. This thing really does come in late game and just click buttons. It's pretty strong against almost everything on his team. Earthquake, Stone Edge, of course, standard coverage options, Roost for longevity. The last move I opted for Ice Fang. I could have run Crunch for Chandelier, but I didn't need it because I have Earthquake and Stone Edge that hit it much harder. Ice Fang's mostly there to kind of ease off a little bit on the prediction side of things. I can use it to hit the Torn, the Tangrowth, the Diancie also doesn't really want to take it. And because it's the only move on my set that's actually Tough Claws boosted, it actually hits kind of hard. It's a little bit scary, so it kind of eases off the prediction game a little bit while doing significant damage to whatever takes it in. The only thing that really takes an Ice Fang pretty well is the Gyarados, and even then it doesn't take it that well. So, yeah. Next up is going to be his partner in crime, is going to be Wukong the Infernape. Infernape running Choice Scarf this week. This is basically saying you have to be Scarf Torn T, otherwise I will outspeed your team. He could bring Scarf Raikou as well, I guess. That also outspeeds this, but not really by a lot, to be fair. Flare Blitz Close Combat, General Stab. Hits quite a lot of his team really hard. U-turn to get out of there, and Thunder Punch is there. Mostly for coverage, mostly for the Gyarados in case he brings that. It does also do some decent damage to the Rotom. I considered running something else on it, but I think Thunder Punch is just a general best coverage option I can run against him. Now, I am fully aware he could be like Flash Fire Chandelier, which does mean that my Flare Blitz doesn't do a lot, but Flare Blitz even into a physically bulky Tangrowth, I think two-shots it after rocks, so it's pretty close. But yeah, it does hit incredibly hard. Obviously max speed, max attack, and a Jolly Nature, just to see if I could outspeed the Torn. If he's not a Scarf Torn, I will outspeed him, so we'll see what he opts to bring. Next up is gonna be Celebi here with Pink Onion, as I've nicknamed it. Running a leftover set this week. It's basically gonna be my Stealth Rooker of choice. This thing can switch in relatively okay on a lot of his team. Running a bit of HP there, bit of speed. I can't remember what I ran the speed for actually. I had a reason for 36 speed and it's just slipped my mind. It's gone. But yeah, max special attack. It does hit pretty hard even with the natural bulk on his team, on my team, so we'll see if I can really make use of this. This really does murder the Diancie, by the way, with Giga Drain. I almost ran Z-Move on this, but I needed Z-Move on my other Z-Captain this week. Signal Beam is there for Malamar mostly. It also hits the Tangrowth relatively well. So, and Dazzling Gleam is there mostly for Garchomp, as Garchomp really takes a Giga Drain relatively okay. So, Dazzling Gleam kind of catches out the Garchomp if he tries to switch in on it. Next up on the team is going to be Timson Saklafki. We're actually running Magnet Rise. Now, I mentioned Magnet Rise in my draft breakdown as I wasn't sure if Magnet Rise would be banned or not. The actual regular Magnet Rise is fine. It's Z Magnet Rise that's banned. That's where my confusion came in there. So yeah, we're running Magnet Rise this week. This is basically to make sure that things like the Garchomp don't hit me because I need the ground immunity for a little bit. Sob's there just to guarantee that I get it up. Spikes is also there because Spikes actually hits quite a fair bit of his team. It's only really the Rotom and the Torn that doesn't take Spikes. So we got a pretty good option here. Play rough generally for Stab just to hit the Garchomp back if he tries to switch it in. I felt like it was a little bit better than having a Steel move on him this week because I actually have a Steel move on my next pick, which is going to be Trivern the Hydreigon. Running Steelium Z this week. Steelium Z Flash Cannon hits his Diancie and one-shots Diancie unless it's fully Spadef Assault Vest. And even if it is fully Spadef Assault Vest, Z Flash Cannon into Flash Cannon actually kills it. So this thing is basically there to trick the Diancie, lure it in and basically blow it up. Dark Pulse hits the Chandelier incredibly hard. Draco Meteor there for the Garchomp and U-turn to get myself out of there if I need to. Max speed, max special attack, pretty standard, nothing too complicated this week. Obviously has Levitate, of course, for the ground types, for Garchomp and other things that can run Earthquake on his team. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And last but by no least is Patrick the Tentacruel. I think probably this is the most important one on my team, as it sponges hits from quite a fair few things on his team. It is my Rapid Spinner in case he brings entry hazards, which actually I didn't talk about entry hazards, I'll talk about that in a minute. But we've got Scald, Sludge Wave, Toxic Spikes, Rapid Spin. Entry hazards against his team is actually pretty strong. So the Toxic Spikes, there's a lot on his team that doesn't really want to appreciate it. I do actually want to mention his hazards real quick. He has 2 Stealth Rockers in the form of Diancie and Mega Garchomp, and 2 Defoggers, Red and Wash, Taunty, and no Rapid Spinner. So he doesn't have the most entry hazards, and he doesn't have the most removal. He has no Spikes, T-Spikes, or Webs. So the hope is, of course, if he doesn't bring either Taunt or Red and Wash, he only has 1 Defogger. And he doesn't really have a lot of Stealth Rockers on his team either. So I do think the Garchomp and the Diancie will both come though, so there's a chance that at least one will run it. So I justified Rapid Spin on that. 144 speed, I had a reason for that. I think it's to outspeed Red and Wash. I think it's Red and Wash it outspeeds. It should do. Yeah, I think it's Red and Wash it outspeeds, so I can Sludge Wave and Toxic Spikes in its face and not really care. Running obviously a little bit of physical bulk, Tentacle kind of suffers on the physical side, so if it does end up taking an Arc off or a potential Earthquake, it does have a chance to live Earthquake if it's not Garchomp's Earthquake. So we'll see. But yeah, that's gonna be my team. Sorry for recording this so late, guys. I will be doing the Battle Wheel soon. Hope you're all having an awesome day. My name's Robombi Teacher. I'm your coach of the Royal Bournemouth Robombies, and I will see you all next time.